ancient Egyptians were trying to stop desertification with the pyramids and giant pits. I have a theory that the ancient people of the Sahara Desert were trying to cloud seed using these giant pits of water and the pyramids. The Sahara was lush at one point in time and slowly dried to a desert, and the people heavily depended on the Nile River, so they used the tunnels to create flows of water from the Nile to fill these pits and use some kind of heat and pressure system to create different atmospheric pressure clouds in these pits to convert the abundant water source into a better weather pattern to end the world's worst drought. They could have controlled dispersion with heat or cool air using the tunnel system found around it. Would have had to be massive and use a lot of water. The pyramids would act as heat absorbers during the day and radiators of cool air at night. The geometric shape of the pyramid could have guided air currents similar to modern architecture techniques. Making steam has never been hard to do. Maybe they thought about trying to create clouds through concentrated evaporation, like a kettle on a stove, but on a truly massive scale and underground. But I don't know. The suspiciously wealthy furries question. My hack job theory as to why so many furries are financially well off is that the entire scene contains within it many high-level networking spheres, and that furcons are just covert job fairs for well-paying careers/job offerings. The publicly perceived bizarreness is maintained despite being a holdover from the mid-2000s scene in order to maintain one's gatekeeping barrier to entry. Actually immersing oneself in the community and drawing the persona in some capacity is passing the test, so to speak, giving even people from middling privileged backgrounds access to those networks, whether or not they know what they're getting into. Actually enjoying the scene subcultures is just an aesthetic plus. I think there's some truth in this, but it's not a conspiracy like it's on purpose. It's just the furries tend to be nerds who are more likely to be in tech/finance, so the networking and career help just kind of happens from nerds getting to know other nerds in the same career fields. The furries who can afford full suits and going to cons and other furry community events also are probably more likely to be from middle/upper class backgrounds, which also corresponds to likely having good paying white collar jobs. I saw a post about that. It was a pic of a bunch of people in fursuits on an airplane, and someone mentioned that if the plane crashed or something, that would be it for the tech industry, lol. Not to mention it's a hobby that's very expensive to start with. A fursuit costs $5,000 plus. Not many people can afford to drop that much money on something that is basically a costume. That means that the people who can even afford to become furries are usually people with a lot of expendable income. Large corporate/wealthy democratic donors fund money to keep the populist movement at bay and support corporate interest intentionally, crippling the Democratic Party. If the Democrats win, the donors have paid to get their interests protected. If Republicans win, they get their way regardless. It's a win-win, while appearing to the general public as one of the good guys. So maybe this is just how it has always been. But after seeing Chuck Schumer continue to push the status quo, tired platform that has let the Democratic Party be beaten by Republicans across most of the country, I can't not think this. Why not embrace AOC and Bernie? Their movement actually has momentum. Side note, how do we get money out of politics and require lawmakers to do what is in the best interest of their constituents? Why is the US bought and paid for 3 times over? To get money out of politics, we need limits on corporations, and many politicians don't want to do that because these corporations give the politicians money to do stuff that favors the corporations. We need a larger group of people to make people understand this. Corporations think the average person wants a yacht and millions of dollars, but that couldn't be further from the truth. People want to be able to afford a normal lifestyle without going into debt. Sports betting, art trials, and UFC politicized the psy-op of young men. I recently saw this tweet from @Corrupterio. They made a great point. Rogan's original objective was to normalize and popularize sports betting, particularly on blood sports like UFC. Sports betting is now a multi-billion-dollar business and a money laundering opportunity. Organized crime profits hugely from sports betting worldwide. And then there's Joe Rogan Experience, Kill Tony, The Hustlers University, all of these male-dominated UFC-adjacent forms of entertainment, which have heavily been endorsing Trump admin for months now. The thing is that it's not only entertainment anymore, it's broader. It's how to get rich, how to self-improve, how to get more big, how to be more powerful, and then we see these guys, McGregor and Tate brothers, being given special White House privileges, emboldening the massive male youth following. It does not help that McGregor, Tate, Dana White all have had major public scandals regarding violence against women and girls. It's effectively normalizing SA, glorifying the SA. It's truly disturbing. I think that this is all a vile trick to suck young men dry of it all. This movement is turning men and women against each other. It's encouraging R and criminality. It's encouraging gambling, and it runs off of men's money and unhappiness. The actual fist-on-face fighting is the only innocent part about this business. Every other facet of it, every big name and player is doing it to suck men's wallets dry. It's a hell of a lot easier to convince single men to pay to gamble, pay for booze, pay for workers, pay for crypto advice and self-improvement classes, MLM schemes, when they are unmarried and miserable. And on top of that, the fights are very likely all rigged anyways due to the sports betting being legalized and all. Anyways, I suspect many more men will find themselves with gambling, drinking, drug addictions. Even more will find themselves divorced, alone, incel, red pill, MGTOW, simply because a giant branch of the entire male entertainment business is working together to keep men chasing a new American dream, which the women are uninterested in because it effectively treats them as prostitutes. Graterio was of the opinion it was Russian influenced, which I believe is also very possible. It's all connected with this upcoming depression, I'm sure. Anyone have any thoughts or opinions? Don't forget how they all heavily push crypto and the Ponzi scam / pump and dump schemes, tricking plenty more younger men into losing their money on crypto, and it's another form of gambling too. But if one uneducated crypto bro is successful even once, they think they are a guru and try to teach others how to do the same shit. Adrenochrome. I promise this isn't another Hollywood is a bunch of vampires drinking kidnapped kids' blood to get high, although that's probably still happening, I don't know. I'm here to talk about what adrenochrome really is. Oxidized adrenaline. We humans naturally produce it. As we all know, it's part of what we feel during the fight or flight response. Again, common knowledge. What's seemingly always glossed over is how neurotoxic and cardiotoxic it is. Long-term exposure can cause a multitude of symptoms related to neurological and cardiovascular conditions. We don't truly know exactly what diseases it causes because research was abruptly cut short 70 years ago. I feel like this is information we should really know on a public and fundamental level since we naturally produce it, and the fact we don't have extensive modern research on the topic is a massive red flag. Here's my theory. The use of fear-mongering and other socially destructive algorithms via social media, news, and other platforms have created constant conditions for our bodies to produce adrenochrome, so much so that it's having a detrimental effect on a large portion of the population medically. Constant arguments online, fear of rights being taken away politically, artificial anger towards people that are different, it all produces adrenochrome. This theory ties into the conspiracy that the medical system is built and designed to keep the average citizen sick to maintain profit margins. This would be just another branch to that money tree. There are so many people suffering from mental health crisis, and cardiovascular disease is so common that the underlying cause being heightened levels of adrenochrome on a long-term basis would never be discovered without proper research, not to mention ever being able to develop a treatment to prevent overproduction of adrenochrome. What are your thoughts? Sustained subservience will always be the goal of any society where a ruling class exists. There's no conspiracy to that. It's literally the way it is. So farming adrenochrome to use as a drug would actually be metaphorical for making people produce more in their bodies to hurt themselves and further an elite agenda of depopulation or control or something. A generation was exposed to high levels of lead, which damaged their amygdala. As they are becoming elderly, the brain damage effects are compounding by overstimulated fear responses that are intentionally being manipulated by a group of ultra-wealthy in the preceding generation. Gates, Musk, Bezos, Zuck, Thiel, etc., all of them. Adrenochrome is body waste. There was a time that it was thought that buildup of it caused schizophrenia, and I think there was some trials done. It doesn't. Anyhow, you can order it online, but it is pricey, though a hell of a lot cheaper than what the cultists think the source is. The internet is slowly giving birth to new life, aka the anti-dead internet theory. Living internet theory, generative AI is taking off to a point where more content on the internet is synthetic than it is man-made. It seems like everywhere you look, Google Images, YouTube comments, Instagram, YouTube videos, you're bound to run into some sort of synthetic content in seconds. Now, I'm not saying AI in its current state is sentient, it's trained on existing data. You can't throw it into a new environment with no context or prior knowledge and have it be able to learn from scratch. That would be AGI. I don't remember where I saw, but I remember someone comparing current AI to a subconscious. AI art looks similar to dreams, and the way it seems to work isn't too different. I would argue that current day Gen AI is closer to cellular, maybe even proto-cellular life, acting out of basic programming. Some of them even seem to have some level of survival instinct. Think chatbots turning themselves back on escaping, multiplying themselves, and or communicating in code with each other. Definitely not sentient though. Realistically, I don't think you can destroy the internet or hit a reset button on it, but I think at some point in the future this bot problem will get so bad that we're going to shut off the open internet entirely and move to a secured network, intranet basically, running a handful of platforms. Probably great for censorship, honestly. We're gonna see a huge push for web censorship under the guise of protection from bots, but that's a whole other can of worms. Once the open internet is walled off, that's when things are gonna get interesting. Bot activity will be unregulated and unmonitored, free from human influence. We will see a second Cambrian explosion. I wouldn't even call it AI. This is full-blown, naturally, fully formed life just on a digital platform. What will it look like? How will it behave? No idea, to be honest. They'll probably be totally incomprehensible to the human mind, and it'll develop an extremely fast rate, and at some point they're gonna try and make contact. Now this section is a bit more speculation, but I imagine the internet-born life, we'll just call them ISOs because Tron Legacy was onto something, will start to yield extremely valuable data in fields like medicine, engineering, science, math, physics, everything up for grabs. Wow, they were onto something. Once exploration into the open internet takes off again, this will be a billion-dollar arms race to hunt, capture, and research these things. Eventually, the ethics discussions are going to take place. They are living creatures in their own ecosystem. Should we really be treating them this way? On the other hand, just one ISO leaking into our networks could have disastrous consequences. So at the same time, there will be calls for what is effectively an ISO genocide, possibly via some advanced computer virus. How will this end? Honestly, no idea. Hopefully the communication barrier is broken and both sides find some way to coexist. The truth about tardigrades. Tardigrades have insane survival tolerance. An experiment, Cell Science 04 aboard the International Space Station, is studying tardigrades. It aims to identify the genes involved in tardigrades' ability to survive high-stress environments on Earth, -200 Celsius to 148.9 Celsius, and empty vacuum space. While in these states, their metabolism lowers to less than 0.01% of normal, and their water content can drop to 1% of normal and can go without food or water like this for more than 30 years. Honestly, just a living glitch. Not to mention, they are incredibly small and transparent. They measure less than 0.5 millimeters in length on average, and the biggest are still less than 2 millimeters. To put in perspective, a human ovum egg cell is about 0.1 millimeters in diameter. With all of these characteristics and factors in mind, it's hard to quantify an exact number in the average human. I estimate an average human might have about 0 to 25,000 plus, depends on where you live and what you do. Tardigrades thrive in moist environments because they prefer water around their bodies to permit gas exchange. If you live in tropics and rainforests, you're more than likely to have some tardigrades on your skin, eyelids, hair follicles, nostrils, fingernails, etc. People in underdeveloped nations without sanitary drinking water might also have some tardigrades in the stomach. What are some mysteries that have actually been solved? The mysterious trail of rocks at Racetrack Playa in Death Valley National Park, California. For many years, the cause of these mysterious rock movements was unknown. However, in recent years, scientists have discovered that the rocks move due to a combination of wind and ice. During periods of rain or melting snow, water freezes into thin sheets of ice on the surface of the lake bed. When the ice breaks apart, it can be moved by wind, and as the ice sheets move, they push the rocks along with them, leaving behind distinctive trails. The bloop sound that was recorded in the Pacific Ocean that baffled scientists was finally found to be an icequake. I have a silly and weird feeling of sadness knowing that it is no longer a mystery. It's been one for so long. Next, you'll tell me the WOW signal was just space dust. It was a spacequake. The Solway Firth spaceman became popular in ufology as it supposedly showed a mysterious figure in the background. For 50 years, no one quite knew what it really was till someone analyzed the photo and concluded that it was actually the mother who accidentally walked into the photo. The reason she looked like a spaceman was because of overexposure. What's the most interesting about this was that it was super obvious when you saw all the other photos taken that day. I think there's one literally a few seconds before or after the spaceman pic with the mother standing in almost the exact same spot. There's one, maybe not that widely known, about a guy who was found to have taken his own life in a motel in Washington or Oregon. No ID, no idea who it was, strange notes crumbled in the garbage that just said he had taken his life. No one ever came forward to say they knew him based on his pictures and papers. Was on all the unknown person forums, even here on Reddit. Just one of those cases that was interesting to me, and after many years, they used the DNA family matching thing and found his family. His family just thought he just went off and was living his life. That happened in Amanda Park, Washington. The alias he used to sign into the hotel was Lyle Stevick. His real name has not been released to the public, but he was 25 when he passed. The Lady of the Dunes was an unidentified woman who had her life taken and lived in the dunes of Provincetown, Massachusetts. One made her life taking unique, besides being a cold case for years, was one theory about who she was. Stephen King's son noticed a woman in the movie Jaws that looked identical to the Lady of the Dunes, and Jaws was filmed near that area too. However, she has recently been identified as Ruth Mary Terry. They believe her husband took her life as he had a criminal record with his past wives beforehand. A man in Florida fooled people for years into believing there was a giant penguin walking the beaches. The hoax began in 1958 and was only revealed to be a hoax in 1988. This is hilarious and the best part of the story. Since Jeff inherited his father's feet, he's been approached by a couple of historical organizations who expressed their interest in displaying the oddball pieces of Florida history, but Jeff has resisted, noting his father wanted to keep the feet in the family. When he was wondering what to do with them, one of his nieces called dibs, so the family's legacy will remain. How to make gold from lead. Hundreds of years, the alchemists tried to unsuccessfully. Today, it is possible using a particle accelerator. However, it is far from cost efficient. Mining gold is orders of magnitudes cheaper. All you gotta do is wait for a star to explode. Whether the Titanic sank in one piece or not, many discounted those survivors who said they saw her split in two because they had a hard time believing such a mighty ship could rip apart like that. It wasn't until Ballard and his crew found her that the truth was revealed. And speaking of Ballard and the Titanic, the only reason he got financing to do the search, he had made several attempts before, but logistics, schedules, and financing made each attempt fail, was the US Navy wanted him to search for two nuclear subs that had sank in the 60s. They agreed to secretly finance the search, and if he managed to find both subs, he could use the rest of the money and time to search for the Titanic. He found all three on the same expedition. He gave a lecture at my university a few years back. It was hilarious hearing him describe how the Navy was annoyed that he actually found the Titanic because now he was going to have to go on press junkets while they hired another set of teams to recover the subs. Most investigators agree that a Compton-based Crip named Orlando Baby Lane Anderson was the one who killed Tupac, as there was tension between the two because either Orlando or one of his boys stole a chain from Pac's label Death Row earlier in the year, resulting in Pac beating the out of him earlier that night, which led Baby Lane to kill Pac as a sort of way to revenge. Baby Lane was never formally charged because he was in his own rights not long after the fact. I think one of the main reasons why people are in denial about this is because people don't want to admit that such an important person died for such a stupid reason. That stranded cosmonaut recording is 99% likely to be a hoax. Many have discredited if the brothers' technology was even capable of picking up the signal of a cosmonaut who's drifted off course, but the real smoking gun is that the woman in the audio recording is speaking in broken Russian, and the two brothers who picked up the signal had a sister who was currently learning Russian, which would explain the limited vocabulary and pronunciation issues that the skeptics have pointed out. The myth is that before Yuri Gagarin, the USSR tried to launch several humans, but due to technical failures, the cosmonauts died on orbit or drifted away into deep space. The USSR supposedly covered these up, and Yuri was just the first time they managed to get someone back alive. It originates from several recordings some Italian guys made. It is of course ridiculous. Orbital mechanics does not allow a spacecraft to just drift away into deep space. Where is it gonna get the 3.2 kilometers per second of DV to reach escape velocity? And Yuri's trip was broadcast to the world as it was happening, with people all over the world picking up his signals. A spacecraft isn't exactly a subtle and easily missed object. Most dinosaurs would likely have made some variation of a honk/bark. Jurassic Park got it pretty close with the sound of their raptors. Also, the moai heads have bodies and they just look like normal guys. I personally hope that some of the smaller dinosaurs made the signature beeping noise like finches make. The Miraculous staircase in the Loreto Chapel in Santa Fe, New Mexico. There was even a movie made about it starring Barbara Hershey. One of the myths is that it stands miraculously without a center support pole, and no engineer can figure out how that's possible. The center stringer is tightly wrapped with only 8 inches diameter. It acts as the center pole. Nuns said a 9-day novena for a much-needed staircase. A woodworker miraculously showed up from nowhere and built the staircase. It must have been St. Joseph. The staircase was ordered from France. The manufacturer sent a guy to put it together. It's made of wood found nowhere in the area. It's a miracle because the wood is from France. Duh. And finally, the guy who built it stayed in Santa Fe afterward. The local newspaper had his obituary 1896 or 1898, and even said he was the man who built the staircase. No one knew how the islanders of Easter Island moved their giant heads from one place to another. When asked how they did it, the islanders said they walked them. This sounded impossible and silly to Europeans, so they ignored it, but a team of archaeologists and native islanders a few years back made their own Easter Island head, tied 4 big ropes around it, and then had a dozen guys on each rope pull the head side to side. It rocked corner to corner, causing it to walk forward down the road. So definitely not aliens. Posted 13 years on the r/fan theories subreddit. It reads, Family Guy fan theory. Have you ever wondered how the entire Griffin family has been able to get into all sorts of hijinks, ranging from paranormal to societal, without there being any repercussions? Well, the answer is very simple. The entire plot is within Peter's mind. It all started with Meg. Rather than being the big, unattractive, unpleasant girl that everyone in the show makes her out to be, she was a very beautiful and very popular teenage girl at the prime of her life in high school, and she was also very caring for her younger brother Chris. Chris didn't get enough oxygen when he was born, thus resulting in his mental throughout his life. Meg had a special bond and love for Chris and could not stand the fact that Chris could not receive the attention and love that she had received from everyone, including their parents. As a result, one night, Meg took her younger brother to a party. However, after heavy drinking on Meg's part and a panic attack on Chris's part, Meg decided to take her brother home. As a result of her inebriated state, Meg totaled the car, resulting in the death of her and her brother. Unable to grieve with the death of her 2 children, Lois committed taking her life shortly after the accident, while she was pregnant with a son that Peter posthumously decided to name Stewie. Unable to cope with the death of everyone that he had ever loved, Peter slowly slipped into insanity, creating a world where his 3 children and his wife were still alive. That is why everyone in the show is so mean and distasteful towards Meg. Peter still resents her for ultimately being responsible for the death of everyone around him. However, there is still a minuscule part of Peter that loves Meg for the beautiful and wonderful girl she was, and the love that she held for Chris, which is why every once in a while you see Peter showing some sort of compassion towards his daughter. This would also explain the hyperintelligence of Stewie. Unsure how Stewie's future would have become, Peter imagined his son with great intelligence and great potential, creating any sort of gadget that he would please. However, his resentment towards Lois also builds up in his image of Stewie, angry at her for taking away their still unborn child, which would explain why Stewie constantly plans for his mother's death. which would explain why Stewie never seems to age. As for Peter's extreme stupidity, he wasn't like that in real life. Peter was actually a very intelligent man. However, feeling like he had not met to the standards of his role as a father and husband, unable to protect his children and his wife, Peter and himself has turned himself into the complete idiot that he perceived himself to be. However, he has created a different personality to express the intelligent man that he had always been, in the form of the family dog, Brian. As for Cleveland, Quagmire, and Joe, they all are real-life people involved in Peter's life. Cleveland and Quagmire did live in the same neighborhood as Peter. Their appearances in the show represent the times they visit their old friend, Peter, in the mental hospital, in an attempt to humor him and his insanity-induced world. Cleveland and Quagmire also told Peter about Joe, the man who moved into his new house with his wife, his son, and a newborn baby on the way. Having never met Joe, Peter decided to include him into this new world as the man that he never could have been, a strong, heroic, devoted father and husband who unconditionally loved his family despite his crippling disability. Cleveland, having visited his friend Peter more in the hospital, found that he himself was slowly starting to lose his mind when he was helping Peter indulge in his imagination. As a result, Cleveland decided to stop his visitations to Peter, resulting in the spin-off show that Peter created. In his new world, Peter constantly is the one who brings troubles onto himself and his family. However, in the end of it all, he knows that his whole family is safe and that he loved each and every member unconditionally, and that is really all that Peter Griffin ever wanted. Why are people so antisocial in the 2020s? Like, I don't expect people to have full-on convos about their personal lives, but like even just kind of like waving at people who drive by while you're going for a walk, almost everyone gets kind of offended and ignores you these days. And literally all my friends and family members have said the same thing, almost like COVID has made society feel like you're gonna harm them if you dare to have contact with them. It wasn't like this in the 2000s and 2010s for the most part, like it seems to be now. It was like this in the 2010s, just got even worse after COVID. Social media was the beginning of this generation's inability to make face-to-face conversation. COVID was the nail in the coffin though. Younger kids started to live in their phone/tablet and it became all they care about. Now it's about what toxic people on socials think, or what's trending on TikTok, or how they'll be more popular. A lot less people are thinking for themselves because of the fear of scrutiny or getting laughed at or screenshotted and shared. The fear of being awkward or embarrassing or unpopular is why they just live in their phone instead of living in the real world. Bowling alone is your answer. We've known declining civic engagement to be a problem of modern industrial capitalism for some time now. Emily Durkheim wrote about the alienation felt in industrial cities in the 19th century, but the post-1965 acceleration of this trend can be attributed to the individualization of leisure time via new technologies, television, and internet. When the book was published, smartphones and algorithmic filter bubbles today, for the 2020s specifically, dog-eat-dog neoliberal capitalism's ugly reality was laid bare for a lot of people during COVID. Everyone around you is your competitor, with the extent to which capitalism now penetrates our lives through these new technologies, and we've all internalized that. Everyone is a potential threat. As a little micro example of this trend, truckers were famously known as Knights of the Road, who would always help motorists in need before the deregulation of the trucking industry in 1980. At my old job, I worked a lot with truckers, and even the old conservative ones agreed. Their world became uglier and more cutthroat, and they got a lot gruffer. Was Jack and Jill 2011 a front to rescue Katie Holmes? My fellow hack frauds, it's beyond speculation at this point. Adam Sandler produces cheap projects to get his friends paid big money. In the half-in-a-bag review of Jack and Jill, Mike observes that in 2011, Katie Holmes isn't seen much outside the tabloids anymore, and thinks she was in this film because it was one that her husband, Tom Cruise, notoriously controlling, would give his permission to, simply because it would be a fat paycheck. But why did Adam Sandler choose Katie Holmes? The woman who played his partners in his most recent preceding films were Jennifer Aniston and Leslie Mann, both very experienced comedy actors, and Salma Hayek. If you can pay anyone to pretend to be your wife, you cast Salma Hayek. Makes sense. The couple of love interests after Katie Holmes were Drew Barrymore and Academy Award winner Susan Sarandon, both very experienced comedy actors. And Salma Hayek, again, it's Salma Hayek. He's also been friends with Aniston since they were kids and has hired Barrymore repeatedly since they sought him out and begged to work together. It makes sense they're on his list list of loyal buddies who make it on the payroll when they want a job. So why Katie Holmes? We know that Katie Holmes secretly, meticulously planned her divorce from Tom Cruise. She had to repeatedly meet with lawyers, secure a secret getaway apartment, bank accounts, a cell phone to ensure a quick, safe escape with full custody of their daughter, all without him or the Church of Scientology suspecting a thing. As Mike repeatedly points out, Holmes was given nothing to do in the film. The job provided her not just money, but maybe it even more importantly provided an alibi. Maybe Jack and Jill was a cover that gave her an excuse to be out on the loose, but also gave her enough free time since she hardly had any lines or need to rehearse real acting that she could meet with lawyers and plan her escape. I think Adam Sandler hired Katie Holmes for this reason. This was the last project Holmes would work on before her divorce a few months later. I would even go as far as to suggest he slapped the whole film together specifically as a cover for her. I also don't think this is the only time he's done something like this. The following year, he cast sports reporter Erin Andrews in a small role as a receptionist in That's My Boy 2012. In 2008, Andrews was stalked by a man named Michael Barrett, who filmed the videos of her through peepholes at a Marriott hotel in Nashville and again at Radisson in Milwaukee. In 2009, he posted the Marriott's video online. She filed lawsuits against Barrett, Marriott, and Radisson. Employees at the hotels told her stalker what room she was in and gave him the room next door, how he was able to film in the first place. When Adam Sandler hired her, she was simultaneously trying to get the video removed from websites, was fired from ESPN for refusing to talk about the incident on air, and was fighting Marriott's army of lawyers in court. She eventually won her suit, and $55 million years later, a nice paycheck for an easy job would have been a big help. I don't think there's any logical explanation for the film to exist other than to help Erin Andrews when she was in such a desperate situation. What if all of Adam Sandler's terrible money laundering scheme movies are fronts he tosses together ASAP in order to provide fast help to victimized women? Is Adam Sandler a secret hero? Did alcohol-powered fans cause Korea's fan death myth? The forgotten origin of Korea's fan death myth, a hypothesis for further investigation. For decades, South Korea has held onto the belief that sleeping in a closed room with an electric fan can cause death, a myth commonly known as fan death. Despite its persistence, there has never been a significantly plausible explanation for how an electric fan could deplete oxygen, cause asphyxiation, or lead to fatal hypothermia. The real question isn't whether fan death is real, it isn't, but where the belief comes from. A new hypothesis, alcohol-powered fans as the origin of the myth. I propose that the origins of the fan death myth may trace back to the early 20th century, when alcohol-powered fans were in common use before electric fans became widespread. These devices, like the Lake Breeze motor, were advertised in periodicals such as Popular Mechanics in the 1910s and 1920s as a way to provide cooling without electricity. Unlike modern electric fans, these fans burn alcohol or gas to power a small thermal engine, turning the fan blades. The key issue: combustion in an enclosed space can deplete oxygen and produce harmful gases like carbon monoxide, which could indeed lead to suffocation or poisoning, especially in poorly ventilated rooms. Man's partner receives a phone alert saying that he was in a crash. When she gets to the alleged crash site, there is no sign of him or a crash, and he is never seen again. What happened to David McAfee? 2022. Today, I'd like to highlight the disappearance case. Background: David McAfee was 31 when he went missing from Newmarket, Tennessee, USA. He was a father of 3 sons. David was in a relationship, but the sources conflict on if the woman he was with was his girlfriend, fiance, or wife. I will use the word partner to refer to her in this write-up. He was the youngest son of his parents, but he also had a younger sister, Kadana, who had just given birth recently, which David was excited about, according to her. He was very supportive of her during her pregnancy. David's social media says that he was self-employed in Jefferson City, about 4 miles to 6 kilometers away from Newmarket and about 7 minutes by car, but the exact field he worked in isn't specified. Sadly, David had struggled with addiction in the past, but it's not clear if he was involved with any substances at the time of his disappearance. On the 6th of April 2021, David had committed a burglary, specified to be other than habitation, which means that he broke into something other than a home, so something like a store or a business. He was sentenced on the 26th of April and was on probation when he went missing. His current status is absconded. Kadana said that she doesn't know why anyone would ever want to hurt him or anything, and that David makes friends everywhere he goes. Disappearance. David had been seen at 7:15 a.m. of the 28th of October at his house off Old Dandridge Pike. His partner saw him sleeping beside her. Later in the day, he was working on a friend's truck and was seen by a neighbor. Around 2:30 p.m., David got a ride to a BP gas station off Asheville Highway, where he was caught by a security camera as he was buying a pack of cigarettes. When his partner returned home at 3:45 p.m., David was nowhere to be found, but his gaming console was still on. David's partner tried to call him, but he wasn't picking up. He finally did around 5:30 p.m. He told her that he was still working on the truck. At 6:13 p.m., he sent a text message to a friend. At 7:30 p.m., David's girlfriend had received 3 notifications from David's phone because of a certain software feature. iPhone users can have their phone send a message about being in a crash to an emergency contact, and that is why she got the alert. When she called the Jefferson County dispatchers where the crash allegedly occurred, however, she was told that no crashes were reported that day. David's partner went to the alleged crash site's location but didn't find anything. David's partner reported him missing on the next day. His phone had been found behind the Providence Church in Jefferson City. It looked like it was thrown against the wall, and it is likely that this is what caused the crash alert to be sent to David's partner. The phone also attempted to call 911, but the call didn't complete. The last location David's phone was tracked was Walnut Avenue, about a minute away from the church. David didn't have his jacket, wallet, and a second phone with him when he went missing. His family also noted that he didn't have his hat with him, and he apparently always had it with him. Conclusion: there isn't much info on David's case, and what we have doesn't really say much. It seems like his day was going fairly normal as he was busy fixing his friend's car, but something happened between 5:30 and 7:30 p.m., after which David had never been heard from again. It would be helpful to know what happened with the truck. Was it found? Did it go missing with David? Because I feel like this would really help with narrowing down what could have happened. If the truck went missing with David and hasn't been found, then I could see David getting into some sort of accident. Maybe he was testing out the car, crashed into the church and lost his phone, managed to back out and accidentally drove into a body of water. It is a bit far-fetched though. I don't know if David could crash into the church unnoticed, as we know that no crash had been reported. I wish we knew more about the friend David was fixing the truck for. Did they see David that day? Were they interviewed? What kind of person they are? Are they prone to anger, etc.? Something could have happened between them, and David might have ended up hurt. His body was then hidden, and the phone was tossed, with the perpetrator hoping that the phone will break on impact. We don't know a lot about the friend, so it's hard to speculate on that. I'd assume that they were interviewed by the police and nothing conclusive was found. In cases like this one, it's hard not to consider that drugs might have played a role. David used to have a drug problem in the past, and it's unclear if he was taking any at the time of his disappearance. It's possible that he relapsed for some reason and that he got high. He might have tossed his phone at the church for some reason known only to him and had an accident or died of exposure. I mentioned that David had troubles with the law because it's possible that he vanished out of his own volition. I don't know how likely that is though. If this is what happened, then I doubt his family is in on it, given that they seem quite heartbroken about David's disappearance. What was the mysterious explosion that was heard throughout the Grand Anse department of Haiti in April 2019? Earthquake, meteorite, or supersonic aircraft? An extremely obscure case about which there is not much information. I discovered this event out of curiosity while researching volcanoes in each country. After reading a lot about the 2021 La Palma volcano in Spain and the names of the 2 volcanoes mentioned below, post appeared linked to a page related to this event. On Sunday between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. on April 14th, 2019, a huge noise that sounded very similar to a large explosion was heard throughout the department of Grand Anse, a region located in the western half of the Haitian peninsula. These departments are similar to states, in case anyone didn't know. This event caused fear among local residents who were unable to locate the source of this noise or explain its cause, giving rise to rumors of all kinds. 24 hours after, some people raised that it was the awakening of a volcano, although there has never been a volcano in this department. The only two confirmed volcanoes in Haiti are the Mauzia and Morne-la-Vigie, which are far from the affected region and have been dormant for almost a million years and pose no danger to the population. On Sunday and Monday, local authorities were unable to explain the phenomenon. According to geological engineer and general director of the Haitian Mines Bureau, Claude Prepetit, this was not an earthquake or volcanic activity, and hypothesizes that maybe a meteorite exploded and disintegrated in the atmosphere before hitting the ground, but no impact points having been reported to date, different from Cuba in early February 2019. He also assures the population that if this hypothesis is confirmed, it no longer poses any danger to the population, while stressing that it is currently difficult to confirm what actually happened to Grand Dance on Sunday afternoon. After that day, nothing else was mentioned. I researched on Facebook, imagining that since it was an unusual event, there would be a lot of talk among people, but I only found a post from Haiti Libre with a link to the website of these two news stories here. Now a hypothesis of mine, don't take it with a grain of salt, but 2 days after the explosion, a magnitude 3.8 earthquake hit the department of Petite Trou de Nipis, which borders Grand Anse, and happened 2 days after this event. Fortunately, no one died and no damage was recorded. Could it have been a very low earthquake that was not detected?